Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to our latest NCAS live webinar. Today we are joined by Andrew James. Always lovely to see you, Andrew. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Thank you. To talk us through the financial support that's available for people during the lockdown in England, but also if we move back into tiers on the 2nd, what's going to happen then? And then the financial support that has been available throughout and things that have been extended. And this is a bit of a minefield really for a lot of people. And so we wanted to put all of the guidance in one place. And you would have seen that in the mailer that we sent out last Friday, we had an article on this and it kind of broke it down. It looked at grants, furlough, for self-employed as well. And so sometimes it's just easier to listen and to speak to an expert. So I've got lots of questions for you, Andrew, today. And I think we'll start off with the thing that everyone's been looking on their local authorities' websites for on a daily basis, the local restriction grants. So could you explain what the local restriction grants are, who's eligible and how to apply?
Yeah, well, basically, Roxy, there's two types of grants that's out there at the moment. And the first little caveat I want to throw out there to members is that our experience in working with your members and indeed with other people in other sectors, they've been damn difficult to get hold of. I think that's the first thing. Whereas things like the furlough scheme or the rates relief, if you've got rateable premises, those type of grants, they were basically well thought out, the introduction of them, and quite easy to access. We haven't found that with these grants. But to answer your question specifically, there are basically two types of grants that's available at the moment. And it basically, for the first and the biggest tranche of the grants, go back to rateable premises once again. So these people who will be eligible for these grants will have also been eligible for earlier support. And I know we're probably going to come on to that later about the number of caterers who seem to slip through the net for whatever reason. Well, the first grants are aimed at people who probably have already been able to claim and get support. So if you're trading from a premise that's got a rateable value of £15,000 or less, you will be able to access a grant of £1,334 a month. If you've got slightly bigger premises with a rateable value between 15,000 and 51,000, then you can access £2,000 a month by way of a grant. And finally, for the biggest premises available, those with a rateable value of over 51,000, then there's grants available of £3,000 per month. So that's the first lot. Remember that grant income has to be declared in your accounts and is taxable. I think that's worth mentioning. But as I say, those people probably already got support. So what's out there then for those guys who haven't got support because maybe they haven't got rateable premises? Well, there is the additional restrictions grant. Okay, so this is specific funding that the government's put aside and it's given to local authorities to distribute, specifically aimed for the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors. Also, people in the event sector can qualify for this, and it's for people that have been required to close or do not pay business rates. So if your business has been shut down, now that we're in lockdown, then you should be eligible to be able to claim for these grants. How do you access them? Well, basically, they're coming through the local authorities, so you have to keep on the website of the local authority in the area in which you're based. Click on the links to the grants and see if you can access them through that. I've tried, or am trying, for a couple of NCAS member clients. I'm happy to try for others, but it is quite a lengthy and time-consuming process. And as I said earlier at the start, it's not that easy and it's been difficult to access.
Thank you, Andrew. I just want to mention here that obviously, we speak with BEIS, the government department that we are in contact with a lot, and are trying to convince them that the local authorities need more direction in terms of administering the additional restriction grants. Obviously, local authorities work differently across the country. The government guide them and advise them, but then they have their own rules and regulations. And on the whole, they largely do what they want, which is not helpful. It's not blanket. So we are going to be having some advice that's going to come out off the back of these sessions that we're having this week, in terms of what the best way to approach your local authority is, and we'll send those out as soon as we've got more information on that.
Roxy, could I ask your members one question? Obviously, from a professional who's advising caterers, I'd really like to know how many of your members have managed to access any grants up to this point in time. And I think that would be really useful to be able to share that information across the membership base of NCAS, and also to us as professional accountants, just to see what success people have had so far.
That would be great. And if you can, get in touch with us via opinion@ncas.org.uk, or just give us a message on Facebook, and we'll get in touch with you about that. I know there are a couple of people that I know of who have been able to access discretionary grants in the past. Obviously, the local authorities haven't put the systems in place yet, I don't think, across the country, for people to be able to access grants generally. You know, we keep checking every day the local authorities across the country. Not a lot has changed. So please do get in touch with us and let us know. Right, then we're going to move on to the furlough scheme, I think, Andrew. Can you explain how it's working this time?
Yeah, well, obviously the furlough scheme, for those people who have been able to access it, has been a lifesaver for many businesses. And it was all, as everybody was probably aware, was about to be scrapped at the end of October, and it was going to be replaced by another scheme. The first thing I want to say about the furlough scheme is, if you're making a claim for the period from the 1st of July through to the end of October, which is the deadline by which it was due to run out, you must submit your claim by the 30th of November 2020. Okay, so please remember that. Get it in before the end of this month to make sure that you can access your furlough money for the period July to the end of October. So going forward, what's the situation? Okay, well, furlough claims must be submitted before midnight on the 14th of the month following the end of the month you're claiming for. So let's just imagine we are claiming for November. So we come to the end of November, we've had to furlough our staff. So we've got to make our claim by the 14th of December. If the 14th of December, or any month actually, happens to fall on a weekend, then you have to get your claim in by the first working day after the 14th, which would obviously be the Monday. If you're late making your claim, then the Revenue has said that they will accept if you have a reasonable excuse for being a little bit late. What would a reasonable excuse be? I would say being taken ill or something like that, which prevented you from getting your claim in on time. One other thing that I get asked by a lot of members is, what happens if we've understated our claim? Can we put another claim in? How can we rectify it? Well, the Revenue has said you've got till the 28th day of the end of the month to be able to correct your claim. So in other words, let's go back to my little example there, Roxy. If you're making a claim for November, you put it on the 14th, you realise you've made a mistake with it, you've got till the 28th of December to put it right. One other thing that people are asking us is, I'm a director of my company, can I make a claim? And yes, under the new furlough that's starting on the 1st of November, office holders, directors, whatever you want to call them, are still eligible to be furloughed. But there are quite strict rules as to what you can do if you are a director and you wish to furlough yourself. So basically what they're saying is you can only carry out your statutory duties. Now, I know that's a sort of a bit of a woolly phrase. So what's my statutory duties? Well, it's basically replying to correspondence, doing your accounts, running your payroll, those kind of duties that you have to do to run a company. They wouldn't include things like marketing and stuff like that, or trying to get new jobs sorted out for next year. I think that would probably mean that you couldn't furlough yourself if you were doing that kind of work. So that's basically it. you're going to get the same kind of support that you got before under the original furlough scheme. And we've actually going to put a newsletter up on the Catering and Accounting website, which I'm sure Roxy will put a link to or something like that. We've got a newsletter that we're putting out, and that newsletter has actually got the links that you guys need to go to be able to access your money and make your claims.
That's great, Andrew. Thank you.
That helps. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about that. So the furlough scheme is more flexible than before. So you can bring people in and out of furlough.
So for instance, somebody who you've already made redundant, but you can now bring them back in and stuff like that. It also, they've set new guidelines and rules for people who do variable hours, for instance. It's probably quite hard to be specific about that on a webinar now, but trust me, if you go and look at the website, this document we're putting up later, it's got the detail of how to work it out and calculate it. And if you're still struggling, send us an email and we'll help you.
Great, thank you. And we'll share that as well with everybody across our social channels afterwards when that piece of content is alive on your website, Andrew. That sounds
we sent it over to AJ this morning, so I'm hoping it'll be up there today.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'll catch up with him afterwards then.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come on to the self-employed income support scheme now. And actually, we've just had a question in from Sarah Ventry, who you all know as Full of Chat. Hello, Sarah. And she said that I know there'll be loads of people like me, and I'm just wondering if I'm missing something and I'm actually entitled to anything. Newly self-employed, due to be made redundant, and then taking over the business. Have accounts from previous years as the business has been viable for 3 years, but just not in my name. I have a new unit, which I have signed for, but I won't be in there till January.
Sarah, nice to see you this afternoon. I'm afraid I think you're one of those that fall through the net, because what they said in the self-employed income support was that you had to have profits from the 18-19 tax year to be able to work out any potential claim that you might be able to make. And judging by what you put in the chat box, Sarah, it doesn't look to me like you have got any self-employed income in the 18-19 tax year. If you want to touch base with me offline, as it were, afterwards and just explain your details more fully, then I can probably give you a one-to-one answer to that. But out on the face of it, from what you say, no. So what's your alternative? Well, Sarah, obviously you've heard us today talk about the discretionary grants. So that might be an area that you take a look at. And the only other area I can put you in the direction of would be benefit claims, because you are a classic example of somebody who the government haven't managed to find a pigeonhole to put you in, whereby they can give you some funding and some support.
It's really difficult and very worrying, really, for lots of, as Sarah said, she probably thinks there's lots of people in the same kind of situation as her. And, as well as speaking to Andrew, it would be great for us to be able to take that information to BEIS as well, to as many case studies as possible, really does help our cause and help the government to understand the nuances of people's businesses. So if you can drop me and Andrew an email, that'd be great, Sarah. Thank you for your question.
The other area which I think we're going to go on to, and it sort of links with what Sarah said, Roxy, is could she get loan finance to help her through the situation, such as the bounce back loan or the CBILS loan? Again, that loan finance was dependent on results from the previous year. So you had to sort of be able to demonstrate a level of turnover, or even a level of turnover right now. And it doesn't look like to me that Sarah could demonstrate that. And so that's another area of support that she might not be able to access, unfortunately. Yeah,
it's really frustrating. It's just, it kind of seems like an admin issue of a name being put onto or taken off a business. And then, unfortunately, this has all happened. It's tough, really. It's really tough times, I think. So please just let us know and we can get that raised with BEIS, and as many people as possible who can tell us their story, the better.
Yeah, I don't know whether, Sarah, you have had a go at universal credits. I know it's not a very nice, type of support to tap into, but perhaps needs must, and that might be an area that you look at.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Moving on to the self-employed income support scheme, it's been increased, hasn't it? Do you feel that this provides more help for the self-employed now?
Well, a number of our clients, first to answer your question, first of all, a number of our clients have managed to tap into it, so that's been good news. We've come across a few disputes with HMRC about what they're prepared to pay out because they disputed some of the profit figures and stuff like that. So there's been a little bit of, let's say, dispute. And I know of a couple of caterers who, in my opinion, haven't received the correct amount of money. But I do think we're tackling those on their behalf, by the way, so that, again, if somebody else has got a situation where you feel that you haven't been paid out to the full extent, we will obviously try and support you and get the revenue to pay out the correct amount of money. But yeah, I think it's been a bit of a lifesaver, to be honest, for many self-employed businesses. But obviously with the caveat, like Sarah's just put up there, you've got to be trading in 1819.
And am I right in saying you can still carry on as before with the self-employed income support scheme? You were able to still work while you were...
Oh yes, You just have to be able to demonstrate that you have been impacted by the virus. So in other words, I give an example of somebody, not in the catering sector, but somebody maybe who is selling on Amazon or eBay or something like that. Usually what we've found as general accountants in those sectors, they boomed, absolutely boomed throughout the virus situation. Well, you clearly couldn't claim if you were self-employed because your business has actually done better. So long as you can demonstrate a downturn in trade, then yes, you're perfectly eligible to claim under this. And the claim points, there's another 2 claim points coming up, I believe, off the top of my head. And make sure that it's a thing that you have to claim, Roxy, so it doesn't automatically come through. So you have to go onto the government website and make your claim, get it in there, and then if you're having difficulty or you think you're not getting the right amount, then get in touch.
Thank you. We're getting quite a lot of questions in and comments about people who've been forced to close their businesses when they're not fixed premises. So
which is right down the road of the additional restrictions grant, I would have thought. So
yeah,
if you've
absolutely
had to shut down, then that's where we should be looking to get support for you.
And I think really a lot of this hinges on this additional restrictions grant, and we'll send out additional guidance. But it's really important to note that in the guidance, it does say, and I'll just read this out to you actually, local authorities can determine how much funding to provide to businesses from the ARG fund is what they're called, additional restrictions grant funding provided, and exactly which businesses to target. However, we encourage local authorities to develop a discretionary grant scheme to help those businesses which, while not legally forced to close, are nonetheless severely impacted by the restrictions put in place to control the spread of COVID-19. This would include, for example, businesses which supply the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors, or businesses in the event sector. So there's been a bit of slight bit of progress with this in that they have actually realised that the event sector supply chain is something that is in dire straits at the moment. And if you haven't and didn't apply for the arts and culture grant because you weren't the kind of business who could do that, they've now said that local authorities can determine and they can provide discretionary grants there. The thing is though, and this is what we're getting more clarification on, is how to approach local authorities in the best way and what you need to say to them. So is there space for you to explain your case that you haven't been able to trade for X number of months because your business relies on the event sector? You haven't got a fixed site premises. You don't have a raisable value at all. So again, I'll come back to you on this, but it's a really, really important point, and we're gaining clarity on this. And hopefully we'll be able to bring you a couple of really key points that you need to speak. You need to say to your local authorities when you're applying for the discretionary grants. And also, we've said this before in previous webinars, you've got to chase and really push for this to happen, and you've got to fight for yourself in this respect. We're here to support you, and we will do in any way that we can. Andrew is here to support you as well. But please tell us and share it with us, because then, you know, the more information you give us, the more we can do for you. So I just wanted to really summarise that.
Yeah, I mean, Roxy, if I can just chip in there also. I mean, we've made many claims for grants on the respect of many different types of sectors and businesses over the years. And unfortunately, what you find is with grant claims, the actual way you've got to submit the information and the data that you've got to provide often differs from council to council, from authority to authority. So there isn't any, as I see it at the moment anyway, unless anybody can tell me otherwise, sort of like a blueprint for you do this, and this will give you the best opportunity to access the grant. What I will say is that when you do a grant claim, you're normally asked to provide, fill in the document, the claim document. Secondly, you're meant to be able to provide recent and up-to-date financial information. And thirdly, most of them usually ask for a forecast, some kind of forecast to show where you're going to be, if they give you the support, where that's going to take you. Now, not specifically with the grants that we're talking about here, but general grants, many of them are geared to creating a job. So many of them say, yes, we'll give you some funding for some new equipment, some kitchen equipment, plant machinery, but we want you to be able to demonstrate that you will create one job as a result of that. Because the authorities then like to say, especially if it's European money, look, you're giving us all this money and we created X number of jobs in the local economy. So just to throw that out there. Can I just go back, Roxy, to the self-employed grant? And I did say that there were two tranches coming in, and one's from the 1st of November, I think it is, through to the end of January, and then one's from February through to the end of April. So you will have to, as I said earlier, you will have to make your claim on the government portal. So there's two little tranches there. And the government have also said that at the end of April, they're going to review the situation once again to see whether or not that support needs to be extended. And you can claim 80% of your profits, well, it was your average profits over the last 3 years. When I say 3 years, that's 18, 19, 17, 18, and 16, 17. And that's how the grant is calculated.
Thank you, Andrew. If anyone's got any other questions about the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme, please do let us know. Just get in touch via opinion@ncas.org.uk. So if you haven't been able to get a grant and you haven't been able to, or you've been able to access little money through the self-employed schemes, you might find yourself looking at the bounce back loans. So there were two types of loans that the government have supported. So there was the one for bigger businesses when you are the CBILS one, where you're asking for quite large amounts of money, and then there were the bounce back loans, which at the time seemed relatively straightforward. And I understand that, you know, people don't necessarily want to get into debt because of COVID-19. It's obviously nobody's fault. It has been a lifelong.
Big changes here the government have introduced, in my opinion, which will help us.
Yeah, it will. And they have really helped quite a few businesses that I know of be able to get through the first lockdown and actually improve their businesses, which has been a lifeline to them. And obviously there's no payback. I think there's no payments in the first year. And the government do back, is it 90%, Andrew?
Yeah, but they've made some key changes here, Roxy. So the first thing for members is that you've got until the 31st of January to make your claim. So if you haven't already accessed a bounce back loan or a CBILS loan, you've still got another couple of months to apply. So get in there, get your application in. If you have already taken out a bounce back loan, but not up to the maximum, and you now realise that, God, this crisis is going on much longer than we thought, we need to take our loan up to the maximum, you can still do that. So that's really important. But the most important change, in my opinion, is that originally with the bounce back loans and I think the CBILS loans, you had a repayment period of 6 years. But that has now been extended to 10 years. So that is going to dramatically reduce the monthly repayments that you're going to have to make. And it could be crucial for many businesses and their cash flow.
In your experience experience of the bounce back loans, has it been relatively straightforward? People have been able to apply for them via their bank or any other bank, and have majority of the time have they been successful with it?
Yes, indeed. With the bounce back loan, Roxy, I can honestly say that we haven't had one rejection. So
Right.
we always make sure that the business fits the criteria beforehand. So there's no point putting in a claim if you had no turnover last year or something like that. But if you've got the criteria in place, some of them took longer than others, I'll be honest. So some banks were quicker at turning them around than others. But I also managed to get a bounce back loan for a business that actually didn't have a bank account when they were first looking at this. So they opened up a bank account, and through that bank, they managed to get the bounce back loan. So of all the support that's been out there, probably been one of the easiest to access.
Yeah, and I understand why, obviously, because it's hang on, let me just. Sorry, I was just getting a bit of feed. When you can hear your voice. I understand why, because it's a loan, isn't it? So you're having to pay it back. So it would be relatively more easy than the grants. It's not money that you're going to be given and you don't have to pay it back. But I think the
CBILS loan was not easy to access.
No.
Because they were bigger amounts. The banks basically took the view that this is basically a normal commercial loan, and we're going to go into the nitty gritty of how, what assets you've got at the back of you and all that kind of stuff. And we found those very time consuming to put in place. We did get a couple, 2 or 3 actually put in place, but the bounce back loan was so much simpler, and it put money into people's bank accounts probably within 7 to 14 days of making the application.
Just had someone comment about bounce back loan and said that he needed a top up, but he's been declined for the top up despite the original loan being approved. Is there anything you can do if your bank says no?
Well, yeah, the first thing to do is probably send me an email after the end of this so I can fully understand whether or not he took it up to the limit at the time. If he didn't, I'm surprised that he's been declined. Peter, I can see it's come up on my screen in front of me. Peter, the thing is, if when you took your first bounce back loan, that was the maximum that you could take out because of the results and trading performance of your business, then I can understand that you can't go any higher. If, however, you didn't take your bounce back loan up to its maximum, then I don't see why they are declining you at this stage. So if you want to send us an email with your circumstances, either through NCAS or direct to ourselves, we'll see if we can help you.
And what's the best email address to send to you, Andrew?
Well, my personal email address is andrew@jamesstanley.co.uk.
And we've obviously got that as well.
And I'll give you a catering one as well, which will help, because obviously we've got 2 email addresses. Yeah.
What happens if your bank doesn't do a bounce back loan? So we've got someone who said that my bank doesn't do bounce back loans, and Tide, who I signed up with, ran out of money to loan. So can you go to another bank?
Yes, indeed, because that's effectively what I did for the client who hadn't got a bank account, because she just didn't have a bank account. So we set one up incidentally with the bank that NCAS recommend or promote. I don't know, recommend's probably not the right word. You shouldn't recommend a bank, but Starling. So this client of mine opened up a bank account with Starling. She met all the right criteria, submitted that, and had the bounce back loan in her account within 10 days. So change banks would be my answer, and have another go.
And can you do that if you've had your bounce back loan with one bank and you can't get the top up from them? Can you go to another bank?
I don't think you can get to that. No, and you can't get a bounce bank if you've had a CBILS or vice versa. So there is some restrictions there. Yeah, you can only get one of the loans. So if you've already had a loan and you can't get a top up, I would try and persuade the bank that's declined you to explain your circumstances fully to them, engage with them, and then hopefully they will see the light and give you the extra money you need.
Yeah, it might be a case of that it might need to be escalated in the bank, and it's not you're not happy with the first person that you spoke to, so you may need to escalate the problem. Sometimes you have to make a complaint in those circumstances as well.
Yeah, you have
to get things escalated.
You have to be thorough and keep going on at it, and don't give up, and keep being persistent, trying to get through to a person who can make an actual decision on your behalf.
Yeah, and just because one person said no, it's not necessarily the case that they'll always stick to that. It might have been to the gatekeeper, and there were lots of people involved in a team in banks. So if you feel like it's not the right thing, the right advice they've given you, you are able to escalate it. As a customer, you can do that, and I would do that with banks, because you do get results if you do put complaints in with banks. Yeah.
Mention your MP. No, seriously. They don't like bad publicity. So
don't know. Well, no.
So if you say, well, I think I'm perfectly eligible, I meet all the criteria, you're declining me. If you won't review my situation, I'm going to get in touch with my MP.
You've got to be persistent and a bit tenacious with this, haven't you?
Yeah.
So we were talking before the webinar about some additional streams of support that people, because they're not in the public eye as much as everything else that has come out recently, but they are still available to you. So I think let's talk about the VAT deferral payment first.
Yeah, okay. So you'll recall that in the summer, people who had VAT that was payable in the period from the 20th of March up to the end of June could defer that. So in other words, they didn't have to pay it. They didn't have to pay it then, they still have to pay it. And what you were able to do was to defer it through to the 31st of March 2021. So we're about 4 months away from that deadline date. And you'll also remember, Roxy, that what you were also able to do was to defer some of your tax payments. So if you were self-employed and you had to make payments on account of your tax liability, which was due on the 31st of July just gone, you could defer that as well through to January this year. So potentially you could be faced with a situation whereby you deferred your tax payment and 2 months later you've got to pay your VAT as well, and they could be big bills. So I saw a bit of a storm there for many clients, and they probably already spent their bounce-back loan money and they haven't got any of that left. And I could see a bit of a crisis looming. But luckily, the government have come up with a plan whereby if you have deferred your VAT, you can spread the payments of that VAT over 11 months, and that would take you up to March 2022. So you start paying in April this year, you got 11 months by which you divide it, whatever your liability was, you divide it by 11 and pay it over those instalments. So I do think this is, again, a bit like the extension of the bounce back loan repayment period, is going to help people's cash flow.
And is the 5% still in place for hospitality still?
Yeah, oh yes, yeah, that finishes though. I'm going to have to put that out afterwards because I can't remember when it finishes. But
and we'll find the fact and we'll send it out. That's no problem.
Yeah, but it was finishing, I think, around January time, off the top of my head. Should know that, Roxy. You caught me out there. But
sorry, that wasn't what I meant to do at all.
No. But it's a very, very good point, because this has probably actually, Roxy, caused me more questions from your members than any other issue about furlough, about bounce back loans, or anything. This 5% VAT rate. And there was so many complexities about it, but we did get some rulings on behalf of some members for how it should be applied. People were saying, for instance, like it was meant to be applied for if you trade from your premises, i.e. from your restaurant. But what if you've got a mobile catering facility? What if you went to an event, let's say Warwick Castle, and catered at someone's wedding? You're still trading from premises. And we put some detailed information up about that on the Catering Accounting website. So please go there and have a look. And if you've got individual queries, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Andrew. And so what we can do is we can put together the most recent advice Andrew's got, and put all the links in, or find the links and we'll put them together for you, so you've got everything in one place as well, plus the advice that we've been sending out in our mailers. So there'll be a whole host of information. There already is, between us and Andrew, there's tons and tons of information online on our website, and on Andrew's website as well. But we'll put it all together for you again and then send it out again in the mailer on Friday. So make sure you check your inboxes for that. That normally ends up in your inbox at about 7 o'clock on a Friday. So We also wanted to talk about relief from corporation tax losses.
Well, I've got two more things that I think will help people. Yeah, two more things. Yeah, don't want to shortchange your members. So the first one is mortgage payment holidays. Have you taken advantage, if you have a house mortgage and are struggling to make the repayments, have you taken advantage of a repayment holiday? Because you can get a repayment period, holiday period of 6 months. And it won't affect your credit rating. I think that because people get really nervous about that, Roxy. They think, well, if I'm not meeting my payment deadlines, like with credit cards or with, with anything like that, am I going to be able to get finance down the line? Well, I've got it on good authority that if you stop making mortgage, you have to negotiate with the building society or whoever's lending you the money and tell them what you're doing. But as long as they agree, that shouldn't affect your credit ratings. The other one is really addressing your limited company members. So let's give an example here. So let's say that you're a limited company and your year end is the 31st of December. So you're just about to come up to your 2020 year end, but in 2019, pre-COVID, you traded really well and had a really good year. So let's say that you made £50,000 worth of profit and ended up paying £10,000 worth of corporation tax. This year, the situation has been completely different, and you've made a loss of £50,000 because you've still got all the overheads of running your business and basically haven't been able to trade. Well, what the revenue allowing you to do, you probably need to get your accountant to do this, to be honest, but you can make a petition, a claim with the revenue and tell them, look, in my year to December 20, I'm anticipating that I'm going to make losses. So what you can do with losses, I don't want to get too techie here, but what you can do with losses is carry them back to the year before and offset and reduce either offset or reduce the tax that you would have had to pay. But probably if you got a year end of the 31st December 2020, you're not going to know the extent of those losses till March or April next year by the time you've had your accounts done. But what the revenue are allowing you to do is to submit an appeal or a claim to them saying, look, I'm anticipating I'm going to make £50,000 worth of losses. I'm going to carry that back to the previous year. So will you please let me off making that payment that I need to make in respect to the previous year? And they say, so long as it's presented well, the information stacks up, they will sort of grant you that advanced loss relief. Bit techie, but probably could be used by many limited companies, and certainly in the catering and hospitality, who probably did make good money in 19, let's hope, and probably have made diddly squat in 20.
If someone wants to delve into that a little bit further, someone wants to delve into that a bit further, where's the best place for them to look for information about that?
I thought I was muted for a minute. You probably want to shut me up, actually. That's probably a good idea. But no, it's information that I've been given because, like, we're in the accountancy game, obviously, and we work very closely with other accountants and other accountancy groups. And I've been told it through those networks and those groups. So there's been accountants who have made successful claims like this on behalf of their clients. So I can't actually point you to that place on the government website at the moment. I will have a look after the webinar, but it's information I've got in the trade, if you know what I mean.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Andrew. That's really appreciated. I wanted to talk just quickly about what people can be doing now, what they can be prepping, what they can be doing in advance of next year. I know it's not necessarily their financial year, but what would you advise people to be doing at this time of year to plan for the new year, really?
Okay, that's a really good question, that, Roxy, because most businesses fail because they haven't planned properly. That's what we find. So what I would be suggesting you do would be putting together a financial forecast for next year. And you're going to say, wait a minute, Andrew, we don't know about COVID. We have no idea what trade's going to be like next year. Point taken. But I would prepare 3 forecasts. One, which is like pants, absolutely rubbish. COVID lasts through to the summer at the very least. Many events are cancelled. Let's get our sales figures through for that one. let's do a scenario whereby, yeah, we can trade again reasonably successfully from April onwards, and then maybe a third one which is really optimistic. Because then, if you do these forecasts, what we use a system called LivePlan. Most of our clients use QuickBooks or Xero, and LivePlan links directly with that software. And it can show you where you are compared with your forecast. And that means that, yes, you can order the right amount of food, you can get the right number of staff engaged, depending on where you are on the 3 forecast roadmap. So I think probably the best thing you could do is do that. Secondly, is obviously get on as many events as you can, knowing that obviously some of them are going to be cancelled, but at least if you've got on all the events that you hope to get on this year, plus a few more, you're going to stand yourself in a better stead than if you just sit back and wait and see what happens.
I suppose also because we've got our membership is made up of mobile, festival, event caterers, street food, restaurants, pubs, bars, everybody really. And people diversify quite a lot now. So you might have a fixed site, but then you might have street food as well. For those people, take into consideration the delivery setup that you've got. And I know it's a paper exercise and it's hypothetical, but that's, why we forecast things. Sorry, Andrew.
So important because it just gives you some clarity as to where your business will be on those 3 scenarios. And it helps you plan much better and plan accordingly and engage the right number of staff and stuff like that. So whilst people who are in the catering sector think, oh, this is just an accountant talking here, it's really valuable. Trust me, guys, trust me. Yeah. And the other thing, obviously, is get your promotion, your marketing ready for next year. And I think that's hugely important as well. And I've seen so many caterers being innovative. People with fixed restaurants here in Birmingham who are going and selling, on pub forecourts and stuff like that. Look at people who've served food outside hospitals, outside schools. So yeah, their events have been cancelled and stuff like that, but they've looked outside the box and they try to find some other solutions because there are solutions available out there.
And I don't know about you, Andrew, but I always find it quite amazing that, our members are entrepreneurs by nature. And so entrepreneurs are able to adapt more easily, change up what they're doing, and they're resilient more than anything. And it's been quite amazing to see and hear the stories of how people have come through COVID, and people haven't given up. And I think that, your advice is really valuable in that planning is everything. It might be hypothetical, but the more you know about your business, the better. And the more obsessive, I am a bit detaily as a person generally, but the more you know about it and the more that you can kind of evidence and justify and talk about your business and the confidence in your forecasting and the money side of everything, which people don't always like the money side of their businesses. They want to be doing the stuff, but it's part and parcel of what you do, and that's what allows you to carry on and develop what you're doing. So I would just reiterate really that it is fundamental to get that part of what you're doing straight, and that you, and to some extent, end up enjoying doing that because you're learning more about what you're doing. I know it's a bit presumptuous of me to say that people might enjoy looking at their money, but and forecasting and stuff, but it is part and parcel of what you do, so it's extremely important.
Yeah, but you need to know, don't you, Roxy, if you're on this track, which is a low track, how soon will your money run out? If you're on the middle track, when will your money run out? Or, and it gives you that clarity of information to know where you're going. The other thing that I would recommend, to be honest, and not that many business people do this, is to really dedicate one morning a week to work on your business. That might be on your branding, it might be on your marketing, it might be on what events you're going to be at next year, might be on your finances and your cash flows and stuff like that. But dedicate at least one morning a week to work on your business. And I get that.
Is invoicing then. That's not just doing your invoices, but actually.
This is working on developing your business. And I get this from a guy called Michael Gerber, who's really some American business coach. But what he says is really profound. If you haven't read his book, read it. I'm not on commission. It's called the E-Myth Revisited. And it's a fantastic book. And it tells you about how you need to work on your business rather than just in it.
That makes sense, Andrew. Thank you. I'll get that book, the name of the book from you and the author afterwards as well. We can put that in a little extended piece of content now. It's going to have loads of stuff in it, so that's good.
Indeed. Well, they can have my book, which is great ideas for business success.
Yeah, we'll put that one in there as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we've got a couple of questions that have come up, but before we go on to those, we're hoping that this lockdown, and the government have said that the 2nd of December is when it's going to finish in England, so that's good news. And then we're having to go back to the tiered system as well. So if you're in tier 3 and you're not able to open as a business, Andrew, can people apply for those grants again?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Roxy, they can. Yeah. So if you're still under the highest level of restrictions, from what I understand, those grants are still available. Great,
thank you. We've covered everything that I wanted to really today, and what we talked about before when we were planning our webinar. Plan. But we've got a couple of questions that have come through. So I'll just go through those quickly. And then we can wrap up really, because I think that we've covered mostly everything now. So Luis says that he got the bounce back loan with a repayment term of 3 years, but the 10 years we mentioned, will it be automatically applied, or do they need to request an extension?
They need to request it. Without a shadow of a doubt, Louis, you've got to write to your bank or ring them up and say you want to take advantage of the government's extension of the bounce back loan repayment terms, and you want to extend it to 10 years. That's easy, that one, Louis. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But again, reiterating what we said earlier on about having a dialogue with your bank. You're a customer of that bank, and you're entitled to speak to them, and you're entitled to question things.
You probably won't be able to get through to anybody who's half sensible, because you'll go to a call centre. But yeah, that's what you got to do. Get in touch with them.
Yeah, you just got to persist, and they'll obviously know about this. This is in the public realm, and they will know that. I think that, so Chris has just put a comment down saying that we've used this dreadful year to reassess our position in the market. Luckily, they've got no debt on the business, but he still thinks that they need more support in terms of going forward.
Is that financial support, Chris, or is that business mentoring, or the government? I'm not for 1 minute championing the government. Don't get me the wrong impression here, but I think they've had so many types of situations to try and cover and support. I think that they were hoping that they could pull back from it, weren't they? Because they were trying to end the furlough scheme, but obviously the virus has regenerated itself, and they haven't been able to do so. So when you're talking in terms of, Chris, that you need more support, is that financial support or is it grant support? Because grant support is constantly changing, basically. There's always different schemes in different areas that we mentioned earlier in this session. So get in touch or have a look at your local authority website and stuff like that, and see whether you can get support from that angle. As I said earlier, they're probably job creation based, most government support, grant support.
Chris said maybe. And so, Chris, we've covered the tax relief and those elements that government have put in place. So when we do the write-up of this webinar, and obviously this will be on our website as well, coupled with the information that Andrew is going to give us, you'll be able to look at that, and there'll be links as well. Jamie has said that he's with Monzo Bank, who don't offer a bounce back loan. You can get one elsewhere. Yeah.
Jamie, try Starling.
You don't have to get it with your bank.
No.
I think that's no. As long as you've got the facts and figures, and you know what your turnover is, and it's a percentage of your turnover, isn't it, that you're allowed to apply for.
I mean, was Chris the last person who just posted?
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're a limited company or whether you're self-employed, but if you're self-employed and under self-assessment, and if you've got a tax debt that's up to £30,000, you can go online onto the government HMRC website and enter a time to pay arrangement and spread that debt over 12 monthly instalments. So when you said you were looking for support from a tax angle, maybe that does the trick for you if you're self-employed. But until we know more about you and your business, I can't say categorically whether that fits your requirement.
So I think that's all of the questions really that have come through, but I just wanted to really wrap up with what we've gone through today, just to give you a little bit of a summary. So we started talking about the grants, the local restriction grants, and then we talked about the additional restriction grants. So the action on that, if you want to look into it, is just keep looking at your local authority's website so they're updating it all the time. Some local authorities will come out earlier than others. Birmingham is a huge local authority, so probably need a little bit more time to sort themselves out. Smaller local authorities do things a bit quicker, but please keep checking their websites. You are also, you can approach your local, the LEP of your area as well, the local enterprise partnership, because sometimes they know more than, or they know what's happening with the local authority, but they might not necessarily, you might not necessarily be able to get through to someone in the council, but you might be able to get through someone on the LEP, and they do share information and they do know what's going on with each other. They can also be really helpful to people sometimes, because they're all about businesses succeeding and developing. So I would, argue that maybe speak to your local enterprise partnership. They're all across the country, and there's also a website and it shows you all of the different LEPs that are across the country as well. So after that, we went on to the additional restrictions grants, didn't we? So this was a discretionary grant. And just repeat that we are talking to BEIS about this and trying to ensure that local authorities are very clear about who this is for, and that it does include retail, hospitality, leisure sectors, so businesses, and they have stipulated businesses in the event sector. So please do have a look at that. And also, we talked about, Andrew, you would be more than happy to support people with it. Obviously, there'd be a commission on that kind of thing, because the amount of time and effort has to go into it. But if it's worth doing and you feel like it's something that is viable, I hate that word, sorry, is doable, then look into it, and please feedback to us and let us know if you've been successful. If you haven't been successful, what the reasons were as well. I noticed,
Roxy, if I could just stop you there, I noticed that nobody in the chat box has yet put that they've managed to access a grant. I've been watching it as people have posted, and I don't see anybody posting that they got one.
Yeah, and now in England we're on the 17th of November, and it's been a while since we've been in lockdown now. So I really hope that something changes this week with it, but we'll keep you updated with what's happening with BEIS in the meantime as well. We then talked about the furlough scheme, didn't we, Andrew? And how it had been extended until March, and how you can claim 80% back, and that it was more flexible this time as well, and that the self-employed income support scheme has been increased as well. Obviously, this is just on the profits.
Through to the end of March as well,
yeah. The bounce back loan's been extended too. We've talked about that quite a lot.
Reduced repayment levels or longer repayment periods, So
it's 10 years now instead of 6 years. Is that right?
Pretty low rate of interest. You probably won't get an interest rate on a commercial loan as cheap as you'll get it on the bounce back loan. And
you can get a top up now, can't you?
You can get a top up if you haven't already maxed it out.
Great, but that has to be from the same bank if you get a top up. The same bank.
I think it does.
Yeah. It wouldn't. I think that would become too complex, wouldn't it? If they're trying to get top ups from.
I cannot see them entering into that.
No. And then we talked about mortgage repayment holidays, and how that wouldn't affect your credit rating, would it, Andrew?
No. You can extend up to. You can have a holiday for 6 months, but you have to negotiate or advise the lender that that's what you want to do. But yes, you're right. It won't affect your credit rating.
We talked about corporation tax losses, and that's something that is that your accountancy companies know about at the moment. So thank you for sharing that information with us. Yes, hopefully all your accountants know about that. If not, you need to get a new accountant. But if you need any more information about that, please just get in touch with Andrew and he'll let you know. We also talked about planning and how it's really important to make sure that if you've got some downtime, use it wisely. And Andrew's advice was that you should use at least a day a week, shouldn't you, or half a day a week?
Half a day a week, I said. Yeah, half a day a week to work on your business. And it can be different things every week, because there's basically 3 key areas. There's finance, operations, which is what you do, which is delivering great food, and marketing. There's basically 3 elements to any business. Work on one each week.
That's great advice, thank you. And you know, money is sometimes, and forecasting is a bit of a scary thing to be doing.
But it's software out there to help you do that. A lot of software.
And I think you probably agree that it's much better to be in the know with these things than to leave it to chance, really.
Correct.
And then we briefly just touched on the tiered situation as well, and that all of the information about the grants that's been released here, that also applies to the tiered system. So we've got all of that information on our website. Andrew's got it on his. It's on the government website as well. So there is tons that you can access in terms of information. But I just wanted to reiterate, get in touch with us if you're having problems accessing grants from your local authority. It's really good for us to be able to feed those things back to the government to bolster your position. The more information they have, the better, really. Please get in touch with us and let us know if you have accessed a grant, because we want to be able to understand how that's happened and what you did. Maybe that would be good advice for other members and other people in our sector as well. Please get in touch with Andrew for any information on any of the points that we've talked about. They're a brilliant company. We highly recommend them, and everyone's been so helpful all the way through this period. I'm sure that everyone's really enjoyed and found all of the webinars with Andrew really, really useful. So
it's very kind, Roxy. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Because, no problem.
We've had feedback from some of your members. They're not clients of ours. And we managed to help them. And we've had some awesome testimonials from these guys who've been really appreciative. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think that, you know, at times like this, everyone has to pull together, don't they? And with each other. Yeah. So help us to support you by giving us information and sharing what your experiences are. And get in touch with us, get in touch with Andrew, get in touch with us, and we'll be able to help you. If you have any questions, please get in touch with Opinion via opinion@ncas.org.uk. Please have a look at the news stories that are on our website, because everything that's sent out in our mailers is also on our website as well. So those stories are there from months and months and months ago. There might have been things that you haven't come across. We'll be recording, we'll be sending out this webinar afterwards with a little breakdown of what was in the webinar. So have a look at that. You can watch the webinar whenever you want. We'll send it out in our Friday mailer as well. Friday mailers go out at 7 o'clock on a Friday. If you don't receive your mailers from NCAS, please get in touch with us, and we'll check the system to make sure we've got the right email address in there for you. And then following this, we'll put a piece of content together which has got the information that Andrew mentioned that you're putting out via your website, plus the stuff that we've already done, and the links as well, and the books that you mentioned as well, because they're always really useful.
Perfect.
Thank you for joining us, and have a nice what's left of the afternoon, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.